You're listening to Games from the Cellar, where we play board games and then we talk about them. My name is Steven, your host, and tonight I was joined by John and Samuel to play the most talked about game of 2022, Ark Nova. Ark Nova was designed by Matthias Wiggy, was published in 2021 by Capstone Games in the United States. Ark Nova is a Kennerspiel des Jahres recommended game of 2022. It was also nominated for the 2021 Golden Geek Award for Best Solo Game and won the 2021 Golden Geek Award for the Best Heavy Game of the Year. At the time of this recording, Ark Nova has an 8.6 rating with 20,000 ratings on BoardGameGeek and has a ranking of 4. It is a 1 to 4 player heavyweight game that should play in, quote, 90 to 150 minutes. There has been one expansion announced, Ark Nova Aquatics, that is a planned release for 2023. Thank you for joining us in the cellar as we go in depth with Ark Nova. All right, gentlemen, welcome to the basement. Today we're playing Ark Nova again.
Again.
For
So what, the fifth time?
I think fourth or fifth sounds right. We've all played this a few times at least. What is your impression of Ark Nova as we go into this?
I mean, I gotta be honest. I do like to complain about some things, but I have a good time playing it. I don't know why that is. Can't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts that on their own seem like a lot of fun. And once you finish the game and are looking at what you have done, it almost doesn't feel like it was worth the 3 to 4 hours that you played.
That's accurate.
But in the moment, you're having a lot of fun, I feel like.
In the moment, I come in with these big plans. And then afterwards I realize
nothing happened that you planned.
And
what you have is a bag of bones sitting in front of you. I mean, you play Alhambra, you have a palace, and maybe it's not beautiful, and maybe it's got one arm that goes sticking out in the middle of nowhere, but it's your palace. And in this game, I always feel like, well, these were the cards that showed up on the table next to me, and so this is what I'm hanging my hat on. So I just, the best laid plans just seem to kind of be sort of arbitrary. So in spite of this being this grand strategy game, it is all tactical. Whatever cards you pull, guess what? We're doing turtles today. That's what you're getting.
That's what you're playing. You don't go into this game with a plan. You come into this game and a plan is made for you.
Yeah.
And it's whether or not you can execute the plan that's been given to you as efficiently as possible. I mean, it's not the worst thing that a game could be, but in a game like this that is going to take 3 to 4 hours, I know some people are going to gnash their teeth and be like, it's a 2-hour game, whatever.
92 minutes.
We like to talk to each other. We like to have fun. We like to look at the cards and tell stories about the penguins. Whatever. It's a 3-hour experience for us. You're given your strategy to you, and for a game that's as long as this is, it seems like a game where you should be able to build your own strategy. For a game to be this long, it shouldn't be. It feels like it shouldn't be tactical, but it's what it is. It's a very long tactical game.
yeah, there's a flavor of strategy. You can kind of pick and choose and aim yourself, but I mean, even that's really just about expanding your options.
All right, so looking back at our stats, we have played 4 times.
Already. This isn't the fourth, this is the fifth?
This will be the 5th time.
Okay.
John, you've played it 3 times, and
I missed
Sam's
one.
played it 3 times. But you both have 2 wins each. So,
Really?
I haven't won this one at all.
I've won this game?
You've won this game twice.
Then why don't I like it more?
You're going to have to answer that one. So, you know what? We're going to just go ahead and give this game a roll, and this may be the last time we play, so stick around and we'll tell you what we thought.
Let's see what happens.
All right, so the table's clear. We just finished playing Ark Nova for our 4th time as a threesome. How did we do? What did we think?
Steven won, so I didn't like the game.
Steven, yeah, I did win. I won pretty handily, but, you know...
All right, you won by an action.
You can say that, but if I had an extra action as well, it would have still been the same. So,
You know, I'm thinking back to that time I burned an action to get an X card or an X token. That was it. That was the one that cost me the game.
yeah, well, you didn't have anything else to do, so,
And that's why I lost.
yep. John, how you doing?
10:32 p.m.
10:32.
Yes.
Was that our end?
That's when I wrote the game off.
Oh, gotcha. So half an hour ago.
Yeah. So we played for just shy of 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and we weren't doing a whole lot of learning this game or even reviewing. I mean, we were rolling along, and it's a 3-hour game.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-hour game.
It's a 3-hour game.
Right. Anybody telling you otherwise is pretending.
Yeah.
And
Or-
frankly,
or-
there were times when we were kind of playing, like if I'm drawing cards and Sam is not quite finishing up his action, he's finishing up his stuff. I'm grabbing my cards and I'm looking through to figure out what to discard, and you're doing the same thing. So we were rolling right along. It's not like we were
Right, and that's not a bad thing. But
a 3-hour game.
yeah, but I do
fine.
think it detracts a little from the game, right? I mean, I had a fine time, but I wasn't paying attention to what you were doing,
No,
right?
but why would you?
Yeah, it
I mean,
didn't matter.
short of making sure everybody's enforcing the rules, you really don't need to look at what everybody else is doing. It just occasionally somebody shouts up herbivore, so I know I get my $2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the gentleman's agreement that we have playing the game. Like, we're not so laser focused on each other's board state that we have to know for ourselves that, oh, John is the herbivore guy.
And there's nothing pressing in the game that forces you to understand where your opponents are.
Yeah. And with as big a footprint as this thing has, it would be near impossible to keep up with each other's board state. Just because you've got this massive board in the middle that takes
so
up all
much
this
stuff.
real estate. I mean, it's necessary
just a
real
lot of
estate. I
stuff.
get it, but it's really large, and we've got a standard like 6-foot folding table and barely had enough room to set everything up without it hanging off the edge.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it would be near impossible to be able to keep up with what's going on everyone else's board.
Yeah, and like I said, there's no burning need to.
Yeah, you don't need.
I mean, when it comes right down to it, you're playing the game to score your points.
Yeah.
And there is so little entanglement with the other players that it really just doesn't matter. So that's fine. You're doing your own thing. But I kind of got, I don't know, somehow my board state, I mean, the actual physical geometry of my board was just not allowing me to do the kinds of things that I wanted to do. So at that point, I kind of became, I don't know how to put it. It's almost like the game is complex for the sake of being complex. It's almost like one of the design goals was to let's see how many special rules we can make that will all bounce off of each other. It's like Magic the Gathering on, 2 Quaaludes and 3 amphetamines to try and make things as complicated as possible. And at some point, and around 10:32, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I could have billed these 3 hours to my customer and made money instead. And it would have been better use of my time. And frankly, I might have enjoyed it more because I would have some feeling of accomplishment when all was said and done.
I mean, that's fair. There's a lot of moving parts in Arc Nova that don't really intersect with each other much. I mean, you've got the map that you're actually, putting little enclosures out in the appropriate hexes. You've got your cards and their requirements and their costs, and then you've got the 3 different scoring tracks and the association board. And
The only thing they're missing is an auction. Halfway
Yeah,
through the game, I
you've-
thought,
you've
what are they
also
missing?
You've also
Or
got the
drafting.
You also got the carousel in the
There's
middle.
no drafting. There you go. No drafting and no auctions. But
It-
it's like, God almighty. It's like, find a rondel, put it on the corner of the board. They probably have an expansion planned.
Yeah, and I mean, some of them tie together well. Like, I actually enjoy the scoring track,
Mm-hmm.
the appeal against the conservation. I think that's neat. I enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
But some of it feels tacked on. Like the enclosure map feels tacked on to me.
All right, so I was thinking about this the other day. So one of the things that is kind of talked about is, especially when comparing it to Terraforming Mars, is instead of having the one map in Terraforming Mars or whatever planet you happen to be playing, you've each got your own separate map. And a lot of people seem to think, and I haven't played Terraforming Mars recently enough to really remember, but the stakes on the shared map of Terraforming Mars isn't really that high. So a lot of players sometimes tend to maybe skip out on it or only put out when like there's a bonus or something. It's not like their main focus.
No, it isn't. The appeal there is, I think, mostly a visual one, is you get to actually see the planet fill up with forests. I enjoy that aspect of it. But there are a lot of points to be had if you win the surface game, so to speak.
And the tracks are, you're all competing for positions on the tracks. The O2
Yeah, I mean, the tracks are, I think, totally different.
Yeah, so
and there's none of that here.
Frankly,
So
I think
there's this boils down to fundamentally a game is where there is a conflict for something. That's what makes it gamey. There's contention, there's scarcity, there's something that everybody wants a piece of, and this game doesn't really provide that. There's no burning animal cards that suddenly you really need to get. There's no particular piece of real estate that's not completely under your own control. And because of that, the result is you're kind of assembling a zoo robot out of a bucket of parts. And quite frankly, I'm looking at it, and halfway through the game I'm thinking it's like that mason jar on my dad's workbench that is full of nuts and bolts that don't match. And you're digging through trying to find a way to make things match, and there's some matches in there, but you just gotta kind of
work for those matches.
Yeah.
So I think my point that I was making with the map is with Terraforming Mars, like, yeah, it's a strategy to win the surface game, but here in Ark Nova, the maps are part of your limiting factors. The map is a resource because you have to build. It's a step resource, I would say, because you have to spend your money to put the enclosures down. Where somebody could say, just make the animals cost more. So, like an animal that goes in a 5 enclosure, they cost 10 more. Well, that's great. You're getting money. You adjust the money so you get more money. But then you don't have the whole, like, well, I can only actually fit with this board set up. I can actually only fit 1 5 enclosure because the board is so crazy.
Yeah.
So there's that economy that goes with it. I think that is an interesting piece of the puzzle. Like, I actually think the map section in Ark Nova is a pretty interesting piece of the puzzle. But again, it is a piece of this whole big mishmash of things that just make this game what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. It is an interesting puzzle piece, but it doesn't feel connected to the rest of the game.
It's one more stone in your shoe.
It's just another thing that you do, and that's fine. But I just like John was saying, there's nothing to compete over.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there were some, like, in the very beginning of the game, John and I were butting heads over universities.
Right, and I got caught in the fallout of that for one round.
You got kind of caught in that, and
there we go. That's why I lost.
Yeah, because John took the one university, I had to take the second choice university.
And frankly, it was just
a
by dumb luck, I had absolutely no clue. It's not like I was countering a position that you were in. It's like I took it and you went, crap.
I mean, it's the resource. It was a resource for a card in my hand. You have no idea what I'm holding in my hand.
Right. So at that point, there's no. Everyone wants to talk about player agency. Well, you get to control your fate. And it's like, well, controlling your fate is great, but the ability to affect somebody else's fate at the game typically makes games more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
People generally like that, and in this game there's just none of that.
Well, the other thing is context, right? Doesn't matter how many choices you have if all of them appear the same.
Okay.
Right? You learn that running RPGs, right?
It's railroading versus actually, like...
Well, my point is, if you take a group of players and slap them down in a sandbox, and say, all right, there's 3 paths. Which do you choose? Well, unless you provide detail, those 3 paths are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter which one they pick from their perspective because they have no way to distinguish between them.
Yeah, and as the DM, you can say, well, I really wanted you to go down path A, so...
Well, that's the
You know
quantum
what?
ogre.
Path C becomes path A now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole quantum ogre argument.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making here in this game is, yeah, you have choices to make, but just because you're making choices doesn't mean you have agency.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of it's dictated by the cards. And we said that at the top, you know. This isn't really a strategic game. You can go into it knowing that you want to... I don't even know. Because, like, when I... Every time
when
I
you
sit
down
down
to this game, what do you go in
every
saying,
time
this is what I want to do?
Yeah, every time I
what
sit
is your
down, I'm like,
chances
you
of
know...
making that happen?
I will say I actually did sit down with a plan, and I made it happen.
I mean, for
my
me,
plan was vague. I was like, I'm going to do a lot of conservation projects, and I did. I did 6 of the 8 you can do,
Yeah.
or 7. So I did a lot of conservation projects.
Yeah, I was like, I
I bent
want
over
to build
backwards.
out a very diverse zoo because the first basic conservation project was diversity, and I'm like, great, I want to be diversity. I want to get
And
to
you
that.
had every carnivore in the deck.
I got nothing but carnivores and herbivores. I think I had the least diverse. I had 3 different symbols throughout all of my cards.
Right, that was like the last turn, right?
Yeah, I mean, all the way through the entire game, I had like 4, 6 predators and like 3 supporting herbivores.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of conservation projects done, but I mean, I didn't win doing it,
Yeah.
right? I released a lot of stuff that, in hindsight, maybe wasn't great.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I really think just the type of animal that I had, like all my predators had the special ability where they got more points the more predators I had, and I kept getting predators.
Yeah.
And so that last lion that I played was worth 3 appeal, or worth 9 appeal, and then had another 5 bonus appeal on it because I had 5 symbols, and it's like, okay, great. I just got 16 or 14 points for like almost no money because the lion, for whatever reason, isn't very expensive.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it
that's another thing that's kind of odd to me. The way the cards are designed,
Mm-hmm.
I kept getting a lot of cards that had hefty requirements
Mm-hmm.
that seemed like they'd be way more helpful in the early game.
Yes.
Like the large animal specialist, which needed like 6 influence and an upgraded sponsorship card,
Mm-hmm.
which you can probably have mid-game if you're going for it.
Yeah.
Right? But it wasn't worth any points itself. It just gave you a free enclosure and made it easier to play large animals.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, great. So I would expect the cards that let you build up to be easy to get, and then the cards that give you lots of points are hard to get.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems almost backwards because I had a card that was early in the game was early in the game, but I had already kind of gotten ahead in appeal to where the card basically was one of the ones that has the 25 appeal limit. And it required an upgraded whatever, and to get any points out of it, you needed diversity. Well, I wasn't getting the diversity just because of my card draws, but even still, like, to get to a point where you can upgrade your card before 25 and still be able to play enough animals to make that card worthwhile, the math didn't add up, and it was just like, this is a dead card.
Yeah.
Like, you looked at it at first, you're like, oh my god, this is so great, I can build up to it and get a bunch of points, but no, there's that 25 limit. It's like, I can't even get the other prerequisite before I get to 25.
Yeah. And really, I think it boils down to, it just doesn't strike me as a tightly designed game. There's a lot of ideas, but it feels like it could use some pruning.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of development that could have. I mean, I'm sure they put a lot of development into it. I think they focused on the wrong things.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is production wise too. Because, I mean, every time we pull this game out, John looks at it and he's like, okay, what's a sponsor card? Okay, so They're blue, right? But I thought the what's the other thing?
Association.
The associations.
Yeah,
They're blue.
We just
they're
played
blue,
the game.
right?
And we can't remember the term.
The
Yeah.
action. Yeah, they could have color coded the action cards. I get why they didn't, but I think that decision could have used some.
I mean, they could have put
Some
a color
double
codes
checking.
like maybe the borders, or left the borders blue and pink for the upgrades,
Yeah.
and then like the base color be more matchy towards the action that's going on. But you just keep looking at, and it mostly boiled down to association and sponsorship, where there was no real good indication of which action it actually was, because they kind of mean the same thing.
Sure do.
And it's just a big miss, because every time we wanted to do like, oh, I want to do a conservation project, let me move my sponsor card. Oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong one. Well, great, my sponsor card's what's at 5. I can't actually do a conservation project. Now I have to like go back and see what I can do with my board state, because the plan that I had this turn I can't do now. And it's all, that whole thing is just a huge hang up on the physical aspect of this game.
Well, what got me was the animal card with the partner zoo requirement,
Mm-hmm.
where the same symbol means something different depending on
Which card?
what type of card it's on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the one time I got you this game.
Yeah,
So
normally
Sam-
I'm on
Sam
top
is
of the
our-
rules.
Sam's our rules lawyer.
Yeah, this time if it's an animal you need, and it has the sponsorship symbol, you need, or the partner zoo symbol, you need the partner zoo from the continent the animal belongs to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same symbol as on the sponsor
It's just a
cards.
handshake.
It's a handshake.
It's not color coded. It's black and white.
And I don't know why it is that way. I mean, there's so many other ways they could have designed that to make it more clear.
There's definitely usability issues. This kind of has that Race for the Galaxy feel to it, where everybody will tell you that the symbols are perfectly intuitive once you learn them.
Yeah,
Which,
once you-
of course, is an oxymoron.
Yeah, once you learn them. Like, I've played 600 plus games on BGA, and I still have to stop and think what certain symbols mean, especially when I start adding in the expansion sets. It's like, oh my god, what is this? What are these hieroglyphs? It's like, I need a degree in Egyptology just to figure some of these out.
Mm.
But, base game, whatever, it's fine. Like, you can pretty much intuit, but
Well,
you have to have
you're talking Race for the Galaxy.
Race
right
for the
now.
Galaxy.
Well, Race for the Galaxy is perhaps 10% the complexity that Ark Nova is.
Yeah.
And Ark Nova has all of that piled on top, and it's got these odd, frankly, the associations are people and the sponsors are not. I mean, the actual
Sponsors are
shape of the
sometimes,
pieces,
yeah.
but right. But I mean, your sponsor's a chicken. I mean, there's just parts of the game that just don't seem to
Yeah.
make sense. But on a bigger picture, and this is the concept of playing a game is you get handed a color, and there's this is me, these are mine aspect to it. This is what I am building. This is what I am personally invested in. And I've played this game, what was it, 4 times
This
now?
is the
We
fourth
just looked
time.
this up, and I can't remember my prior plays. Now, I've got plays of Acquire from 10 years ago that I
Mhm.
have memories of
Yeah.
because something interesting happened. In these games, I end up with a zoo that doesn't really look like a zoo. Certainly on the map, it doesn't look like a zoo. The cards sitting beside it are just sort of this
They're stacked on top of each
they're
other.
a
You don't
gob
get to.
of goo. They're
Yeah.
not. You're not a lions and tigers zoo. You're not a snake zoo. You're just sort of these odd
You're
amalgam
a
of
simple
pieces.
zoo.
And you've got sponsors mixed in there and everything else, and it's just like, okay, so it's just a pile of cards. And it's it's not even a pile of cards anymore. It's just a pile of little bonuses or little knocks or little things that you total up at the end, and it's so you end up, like I said, you end up with this mason jar full of pieces instead of a game that has a central core concept that can describe what it is without discussing the rules.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, even the actual building a zoo mechanic, where you put the enclosures out, like you said, that's a fun part of the puzzle, but thematically it falls flat when you realize that the animals you play aren't actually associated with those enclosures at all.
Yeah, once you
Like,
place,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, once you place the
Once you place
Once
the
you place
card,
the card
you flip
down,
the enclosure.
you flip it
Right,
over.
You have no clue.
And it's like, wait a minute, where are my flamingos in this zoo? Who knows?
And it doesn't
how do you-
matter.
One of those two enclosures.
How do you walk through that zoo?
from the front to the back? And,
No, but my point is there are other games about zoos that I have played, and there is a mental picture. The ice cream machine is next to where the monkeys are, and you and there's you can walk through your zoo.
Yeah,
and
like
Yeah.
Zularedo does
I mean,
that.
frankly,
really
I
good.
think I think that for me is the missing thing that kind of kills the theme. Right?
Right.
I'm not attached to the enclosures in my zoo. I don't go, oh, this one's the monkey exhibit or whatever. It's just, okay, I flipped it over. I'm gonna keep going. I don't care.
You know,
Because they're not tied to
it
each other.
just
I'm not
doesn't
building
matter.
a zoo. I'm just
I'm
Yeah,
just,
and
covering,
even-
I'm just
together.
covering hexes on a map.
And
Yeah,
even
that's
when
all
you
it is.
flip them over, yeah, they're bright, and they like the unused side is pretty bland. It's very dark, and you flip it over, and it becomes this bright. Everything is greener, but there's no like little monkey on the side, or there's no like alligator swimming in
Right,
the water.
there's
Like,
no little meeples. There's
there's-
nothing to describe it. And I'll be honest with you, the fact that they're hexes in the first place, why the heck did they make them hexes? Have you ever been to a zoo laid out in hexes? Have you ever been any place where it's laid out in hexes? It should have been square blocks, like every other game that has ever done anything like this, where you're building a city, you're building a town, you're building a zoo, you're building a building. It should have been in squares. The hexes makes it. I don't know. It's just they're design decisions here that I'm just like, did you set this down in front of anybody other than yourselves?
I think I think the hexes are so they could make more interesting shapes.
No,
That's what
you
it
make
is.
less interesting shapes. You can make really interesting shapes with rectangles because you make you can do a whole Tetris thing if you want to do it with squares. With hexes, you're kind of stuck, and they don't even do hexes very well because if you want a 5 enclosure, it looks exactly like this. There's no options, and you know what? Your yak probably doesn't care if he's in a long, thin enclosure or if he's in kind of in a centrally a square one. But that's not an option. And at one point, I kind of need to put a 5 enclosure in, and the way my map was laid out, it's like, well, tough darts, kiddo. You can't put a 5 in. You have to build your way over to this corner in order to get a 5 in, which would have been a big animal for me. But the game ran out before I was able to get across to that because you can only do so many build cards. You can only do so many builds, and the card goes back down to the one slot. Then you got to build it back up, and I'm just looking at the map, and I'm saying, okay, so that nothing there has the word zoo. I don't think they even wrote the word zoo on the card to at least give you that level of push. And then on top of that, your cards are just this mishmash of animal. Okay, I got a golden eagle, I've got an anaconda, and I've got a koala bear. Boy, I'll tell you what, that's a trip you're going to take the kids to. I mean, it's just this odd set of misfit toys all stuffed in the same box, and I'm just trying to figure out. It's like they had a pile of mechanics, and they said, okay, what can we squeeze this into? And when I read my notes after reading Eric Twice just did a review on this game, and I went back and I read my notes after I played, I think the second time I wrote it up. And, I kind of jokingly said, some games have a theme that's pasted on. This one sort of seems like they only stapled it. I mean, there's nothing there that unifies the pieces. It's just
Yeah,
a
I think
whole
that's
bunch
fair.
of mechanics going in different directions, and they just didn't pull it together.
Yeah.
And there's a whole breed of gamer that wants the burn. They want the complexity. They want those rules, bits and pieces. They want 1,000 rules. They want every card to have a different thing, and they want to pull those pieces together. You know what? God bless you. Take Ark Nova. Have a great time with it. There is nothing memorable from that large scale picture. You step 6 feet away from this game, and it just looks like a pile of pieces sitting on the table. There's nothing there that tells you what it is.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have like I was sitting there like thinking about, okay, should I take a picture of it now? And it's like, what am I actually taking a picture of?
Exactly.
Like cards on a board.
Yeah.
Like there's games that look pretty on the table, like Thebes looked pretty on the table.
Sure did.
And all it was a bunch of meeple. Well, I say a bunch of meeples. It was a meeple a person, and then some cards. Yeah, but then those bags and the tokens and the tokens in the bags. I mean, it was a pretty it was very pretty the way it was set up,
Yeah.
and thematic as all get out.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame because Arc Nova has mechanics that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Like the fact
All of
that
them.
well,
Yeah, I mean,
not all of them, but most of them. But like the upgrade system, right?
Mhm.
Where you had to actually pick and choose, okay, I can't get all of the upgrades. What am I going to get?
mhm.
I liked that.
Yeah,
I enjoy that sort of thing because it was a hard choice
yeah, and
from a mechanical perspective to say what's important for me right now and what am I limiting myself to.
And so, all right, I will point out one bit of strategy that I could have taken into account when I first got the board that I was given. I should have looked at it and really assessed the situation on the board, because what ended up happening for me is I focused on getting research assistants and not taking card upgrades on the main board, because you get like your choice between a research assistant and a card upgrade on the conservation track. But I had enough research assistant cards or spaces on my board. I got to the point where I had an extra research assistant that I couldn't use because
The
I'd already
research
upgraded
assistants are the little people.
the little meeples, the lazy
Okay.
Carls.
Yeah, I don't
I
remember
don't think
what
that's
they
what
were
the
called.
association markers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the associates.
Yeah, whatever they're called. The research assistants are from Thebes. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I had one that I could have upgraded into, but I had already upgraded into all of them, so it would have been a dead spot for me. Had I planned better, I would have had all of those guys plus an extra upgraded card. So
Yeah.
that was my big strategy blunder.
You still won. So
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, there's
Well, I
your
mean,
strategic
and
depth.
part of that is, there's cards that give you those upgrades. There's cards that give you those upgrades.
You know,
But
there's one card that gives you a research person or an association, whatever it's called, and there's one card that gives you a card upgrade and a 230 or 250 card.
I think there's more.
depth.
I had one that
They
gave
give you
another
$3.
association.
I mean,
piece.
you cannot count
But-
that as an option. It's like, how
Yeah,
do I
it's
upgrade
what is
this?
on the
Oh,
board.
there's a card. There's a card.
Well,
and
that's more what I'm
giant-
pointing
and,
out.
and
is-
every time I play this, I'm looking at, okay, so what is the thing that allows me to upgrade one of my cards that I've missed? Somewhere on this board, there's one of them, and somebody pointed, it's over here. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
so I
that's
need to
what
work on
I'm
that.
pointing out is those cards exist,
They
but you
exist,
have
but-
no way to tell when they're going to come up,
Right.
If
Or
they
if
come
they
up.
come
or
at
if
all.
they come up, and
'Cause-
even if they end up in the carousel. Frankly, there's not really an exciting way to fight the other players for control of it. It's
Yeah.
just whoever's turn it is gets to pull it off the carousel, unless they can't, in which case
Or
it
you
goes
get
to
it
the
by
next
dumb
person.
luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to kind of go back even again, so like we barely made it through half of the deck, and I feel like we really were burning through cards there.
I felt, I was surprised at how many cards were left in the deck.
Yeah,
'Cause-
and we've played 4 times, and we were seeing cards that we'd never seen before.
Yeah, I mean, which some people would consider a strength.
yeah,
But frankly, if I've played a game 4 times, I feel like I should be familiar with the cards, and I'm not.
yeah. Because you just don't see them.
Yeah.
Which again, like some people are, replayability because you're discovering something new every time. Well, that's great, but
Yeah, but I think a large
If it's not
It's not
impactful, it
cohesive.
doesn't
it's not
matter.
cohesive, and frankly, for myself and a lot of people, the enjoyment of playing a game multiple times is getting better at it.
yeah,
And that's not to say you can't do that
I just
for
I
Arc
just-
Nova,
I
but
get no. In fact, if anything, I get the feeling there is an optimal way to play this, and that's why I think people tell you, "Oh, you got to play it 15 or 20 times before you really get it." And what that means is the game is training you on the proper way to play it. And you can argue, well, there's a whole lot of complexity, and you have to manage all that complexity. But I just
yeah. But so complexity doesn't equal fiddliness, and I feel like.
complexity is almost the wrong word.
I mean, it is complex in its way, and it's not near as bad as some games where every action you take you have to reference the rule book for.
Yeah,
Like, what was it, Post-Human we were playing? And it
Oh,
was like,
Post-Human.
every time we tried to do something, it's like, I got to look at the rule book.
Don't confuse poorly written rules
this is
with
true,
poorly
too.
That's
designed
true.
games.
So I would say Ark Nova does. I don't know that Ark Nova has a lot of depth.
Mm-hmm. It
There's
has
a-
a lot of cards.
It has a lot of moving parts. I don't know that there's much depth.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
it's
you could
like-
almost, if you wanted to program in all 200 and whatever cards, you could almost like program in a matrix, like do
Yeah.
this card over this card, and
You just look
if
at
you
look
if
at what,
then you could almost.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
you
saying
could
that
you could
not as a
almost you could
programmer,
no you
but-
you could probably come up with something that wouldn't do terribly. Right? Look at the cards in your 4 and 5 slot. If you have an animal in your hand, you can play and an enclosure open. Play that. If not, whatever, you could probably do that. It'd be an endeavor, but
Yeah,
you know,
who would want to, right?
I'm sure somebody's working on it.
I guess that's what AIs for the computer program on Steam will be, right?
Yeah, somebody else can do that.
I mean, AI is a bit generous, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think there's a certain amount of a plinko machine going on here, where the balls are going to bounce down that machine the way they're going to bounce down, and you're going to get, you're going to get the cards that are dealt you, you're going to get the opportunities that are dealt you, and people are telling me you need to get 15 plays in, and I'm like, well, how many times do I play a 3-hour game that I'm just not finding a whole lot of
Right. I don't
reward from?
want to play this 15 times.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys
And
told
that's-
me, Samuel, we're going to play this 10 more times, the next 10 weeks we're playing Ark Nova,
Yeah. You're going to sit it out.
I'd probably sit it out. I'd be like, all right, cool. I guess let me know when
I'm
you're not.
sorry. My wife says that we've got dinner plans that week.
And the week after.
And
And the week after that,
yeah.
and then we got to take the dog to the groomer,
It's
and
not you, it's me.
Right. I just, like we said at the beginning, I enjoyed playing it for most of the time. Like 75% of the time, I was enjoying myself.
Yeah, I
But
think I was
then-
done long before you were.
Yeah, well, but then it definitely tapered off, and I was like, okay, well, I like finishing a long game and looking at the board and going, yes, I can see what I accomplished. I can see what I should have done
This
better.
is me, these are mine.
And Ark
Yeah,
Nova
like,
doesn't give you that sense.
when you play an 8-hour game of Civilization, you can look at the map and be like, wow,
It tells a story. Yeah.
You remember when you tried to
It
like
tells a story.
have
You
a
know-
stronghold in China,
Yeah, you
and
know
I just
where I made the mistake when I turned that corner, and this is like you look at the map and you look at the stuff in front of you, and you're like, well, that's what got dealt me. So that's what I got.
Yeah.
Because that's what got dealt me.
I mean, I got a
So-
lot of great
Predators.
predators. Thank you. I got a lot of great predators, and they all worked really well together. But like I wasn't like, all right, great, it's a lion. Like I like giraffes. I always want the giraffe, or I want turtles. Like those are the types of animals that speak to me. And if they ever crossed my hand, they would have gone in my zoo. That's just how it is. But it's like, no, you get a raccoon. Okay.
I mean, John got the Okapi, and he wasn't even excited about it.
But the raccoon's a predator, so I mean, I guess I should play him because he keys off the other predators that I have.
Yeah. And I mean, I can see why that, like, the appeal there is, there's so many different animals. Each animal's a different card. But as a result, there's not many animals that feel special to get in play.
Yeah. I mean, they all kind of have, like, the predators have their pack, and then the herbivores have their herding,
Yeah.
and snakes have their attacks, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but they're not herding with anybody. They're not. And, it's a zoo, all right? Where are the baby animals? Where's the trading with other players because you can breed animals and they can't, or the two of you have to work together?
Oh, don't add more complexity to this, John.
No
more mechanics,
but
John.
you strip out so much in order to get that.
Well,
kind of thing together.
basically what you're saying is, wouldn't it be cool to make a board game
They're out
like
there.
Ark
based
Nova.
around a zoo, with a zoo theme?
But
That's what
there-
you're saying. You're
there-
saying the zoo theme is cool.
There's plenty of zoo games out there. It's not just Zoo Loretta. Was it Alfredo Zoo or something? There's another. There's somebody that's got a zoo. There's one where you actually you put in the sidewalks and the park benches and that sort of thing. I'm trying to. Zulo Mio is out there. There's a bunch of zoo games that, granted, are far simpler, but at the end you have a zoo and you have a story to tell. And I think Ark Nova is a game in search of a story.
Yeah.
I just don't think it pulls those
That's a
pieces
good.
together.
That's a good line.
Yeah, there's no narrative.
It's a game in
Yep.
search of a story. There's not even a story you can build from players competing for things.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everything, if I didn't get it this round, I'll just get it next round.
And if I don't,
if I
will look
don't,
at the board
yeah,
and
well-
see what I can get.
Yep.
And I was talking about how bland the zoo tiles are. If you were able to like put all the zoo tiles together in such a way that you got them like right up next to each other, you wouldn't be able to determine what size each of those tiles are because
Yeah.
they all have the exact
Yeah.
same art.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The art
There's-
is not
there's,
inspiring at all.
Like at least so a game like Agricola, like okay, you've got rooms in your house. Okay, great. And they're brown or orange or gray. But each one has these tiny details that make them into like that give them charm and give them a little bit of individuality. And it's like just
Yeah.
a little bit of artistic touch like that could have made
yeah.
the end result.
And there is no charm in Ark Nova.
The charm
At
is
all.
in the cards, but once you play the cards down, you're stacking them on top of each other, so all you can see is the symbols.
Yeah, you lose the art.
So you're
and frankly,
completely.
the art at times is not terribly.
Is it
charming.
art?
Yeah.
I thought it was just pictures of
It's-
animals.
It's photography.
Yeah.
It's right. It's,
I mean, like, it's cool to see all the
open
animals,
domain
but-
photos off of
Yeah,
the internet.
but
and
I
that's
mean,
fine because
like
they're nice
the
shots.
the main asset of the game, which is the photos of the animals, you're essentially covering up because the game only wants you to look at.
Right, the rules part, the
Right.
little technicalities.
They
And
only
that's-
want you to look
symbols.
at the symbols at the top. Like there aren't even enough cards that have abilities that you need to have the full card available to see.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and frankly, that's the shame of it all, right? Is the appeal to Ark Nova is the animals.
And then
And-
you cover them up.
In the grand scheme of things, the animals aren't that important
Yeah.
because they're washed away in all of the other mechanics.
See, at least in Terraforming Mars, the action. So it's just the action cards in Terraforming Mars, but at least the action cards in Terraforming Mars, you leave them uncovered so you can see what they do.
And frankly, in Terraforming Mars, the cards aren't the star of the show.
Yeah.
The star of the show is the theme
that
of
center board
you've got the center
Right.
board, you're terraforming
Temperature,
Mars, you can
the
see the
oxygen.
tracks moving,
and the
and
hexes.
that feels
The hexes make sense on a planet's surface,
Mhm.
and when you have a couple of city tiles
with the
surrounded by
forests,
vegetation,
you can see it.
that paints a picture. The
Mhm.
hexes in Ark Nova are just counter to how your brain thinks about the way
They're
a
just-
zoo would be laid out.
They're just a secondary cost to play animals.
Yes.
Yes.
That's all
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are.
That's I think that's the thing is Ark Nova doesn't have a big star to focus on,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have a good theme. None of the mechanics are particularly stand out.
I mean,
as
they're all
most
great
important.
mechanics. Like
But
if you
they're
took
all-
like 2 or 3 of them and made a game about that incorporated 2 or 3 of them, like any 2 or 3 of them, I think you would have a good game developed properly, of course. But throwing 6, 7
I mean,
different mechanics,
They're all side
mechanisms
dishes.
together, yeah.
They're all side dishes. There's no main course, so to speak.
It's like going and picking off a charcuterie board.
Yeah.
Charcuterie board.
yeah, it's not. None of them are bad on their own, but
Mhm.
there's nothing to tie them together.
Yeah. I don't know. So, let's just say you're on your BGG account, and it says, "Hey, you need to rate Ark Nova." John, what kind of a rating are you going to give Ark Nova?
You know, I may have already done this. I didn't look. I just read my notes. I didn't look.
Okay.
It is crawling and diving at the end to maybe hit a 7.
Okay, so maybe a 7. Samuel, what do you got? You're not very active on BGG. You need to
No,
you need to
I'm not.
become active on BGG and actually rate the games. But let's pretend like you keep up with your Board Game Geek account and you rate the games as we play them. What would you give Ark Nova
I think
as a rating?
I would give it a strong 7.
Okay, strong
A
7
strong
from Samuel.
7, yeah. With the caveat being that, I play games to figure out how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
And once I figured out the good ones, I don't want to play a 7,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. I get you. Yeah. So, I do keep up with my Board Game Geek account. I log all my plays. And like I said, I use BG stats so that we can kind of see who wins and who doesn't.
So my
And
minus 30 score.
your minus
is
30 score is
permanently
logged.
recorded.
It's permanently recorded.
It's immortalized.
Immortalized, yes. So I will be logging into Board Game Geek tomorrow because it is
Midnight.
almost midnight. And there's things that I love about Ark Nova, but then there are things that I'm really mad about, and that's just like how the whole package comes together. So at most, I think this one could get a 7 from me. So that's probably what I'll put.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Can't argue with that.
I'm glad that we were able to play this together and have a time, maybe a good time, like 30 to 40, maybe an hour worth of the 3-hour span. But I got a copy of Ark Nova for trade if anyone wants it. Just hit me up.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to close the door on the Ark Nova chapter of my life.
Yeah. I mean, it was, for what it was, I enjoyed it. I'm glad it came, and, I'll be glad that it goes somewhere where it'll be appreciated.
And I hope somebody takes the concepts here and makes
A good game.
I wasn't going to say it, but
All right, so
I'm there
I'm
for
going
you.
to back up just 1 second. So there is going to be an expansion, and obviously, and, we're going to add more cards to it. Huzzah. But
woo, just what it needed.
there's a way to add cards to a game, and there's a way to not do it, and I hope they do it the way that makes the game better. I mean, take Wingspan, for example. It's another big deck game,
Do
and
we have to take Wingspan as an example?
we do have to take Wingspan as you've only played it with the base set, and I get that you're not like super thrilled with it, but all the expansions, they all add more cards, but the first expansion like addresses that issue and is like, all right, great, we're giving you more cards, but you get to look at more cards at a time. So you still are getting through the deck about the same rate. So while you have more choices, you're not actually like really drawing the game out. I appreciate that. Like I've only played it once, but I didn't feel like it added so much to the game that it slowed it down like a lot of expansions do. And I really hope that they get it right with Ark Nova for somebody else.
Well, some people seem to enjoy it, so God bless them.
People will enjoy anything.
Well, that was Ark Nova.
That was Ark Nova. Thank you for joining us. John, Sam, and I thank you for joining us in this conversation about Ark Nova. You can join us in conversation by visiting our website, cellargames.com, where you can find links to our social media and Discord server. We also have a blog and guild on Board Game Geek, and we look forward to hearing from you.